Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Season 4 of the SPEMA Council podcast. My name is Madeline Grossi. I'm one of the co-hosts for this season, as well as the podcast administrator. Joining me on the hosting side today, we have Jackson Pretley, our podcast producer and social media manager. Also, we have a really special guest today that Jackson is going to introduce now. But also just a big shout out. This is our last episode of the season, so we're super excited to have this guest as our final episode. So Jackson.
Thank you, Maddie. So on our season finale, we have Justin Morrow. Justin was a professional soccer player in the MLS for 12 years, playing with both the San Jose Earthquakes and Toronto FC. While playing soccer, Justin was the co-founder of the Black Players for Change, an independent organization working to bridge the racial equality gap in society. Today, Justin finds himself as the technical development manager at MLSC, and we welcome him as the 21st and final guest here on the SPEMA Council podcast.
Final guest, I like it.
Last. Exactly. So Justin, if you don't mind, can you just go more in depth with your current role with Toronto FC as the technical director?
Yeah, technical development manager. I don't want anyone confused out there thinking that I'm the technical director. I am helping bridge the not the gap, but the transition between the academy, second team, and first team. And what we know is that it's a big transition going from amateur to the professional level. We've had a lot of young players around here for a number of years. We've done a great job at getting kids up to the first team, getting them signed professionally, getting them some field experience. But the more support that the club can give them, the better they'll do once they're up there, because we know how hard the transition is. They're all of a sudden teenagers in a locker room full of veterans, guys that have played in different leagues around the world, World Cups even, great experiences. Most often there's a huge gap in age. And, these are men that they're around now. They're men that are supporting their families through this job. And with that comes different responsibilities. So to just throw a kid in there and say, here, all right, now you're pro, act like everyone else, there's a learning curve there. And so if we can give them additional support as a club, hopefully we'll be able to see the benefits of that on the field. We do a lot of work here in youth development in Toronto with Toronto FC. Our academy is pretty profound, and we have a great talent base in the GTA to work off of. And the community has been amazing in supporting us and sending great players, and our scouting network does a great job as well. So we want to make sure that we're cultivating and taking care of that appropriately, because with that comes responsibility, and so as we're continuing to advance along this path of player development and see that play out at the first team level, the more support that we can give them from a club side, the better. So that's kind of the genesis of my job. I was coming off the pitch so recently, having just been in the locker room, it makes a lot of sense for me to be in and around those guys, to help give them some advice and maybe be a little bit of a bridge between what the coaches have to say and how they're receiving the information, because we also know that it's helpful to have mentors around. So that's a little bit of what I'm doing, and it looks different every single day. It can be, like I said, mentoring. It could be video analysis. It could just be spending time with the guys. It can be giving them, life experiences, taking them outside of the training ground and getting them experiences, whether that's our foundation at Launchpad, where they can have their feet on the ground there and see what happens day in and day out with the kids that we serve in the community. There's just a wealth of experience that they can get here with Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, when you try and give them and add that a little bit into who they are as well, so that whether they make it to the first team level or they don't, they've had a good experience as young men here at Toronto FC. So that's a little bit about my role and what I've been up to.
Yeah, and I would imagine, I'm familiar around being at the field, whether that be a few years ago when I was just a fan and going with my family, or now being there on the game days and seeing the players. But I think sometimes I stand there and think he looks so young, he looks like he could be in my class with me. But then you think the Toronto FC have some also big new players right now, some pretty big names. And you think they probably grew up idolizing those players or like looking at those players as role models. And now like Insigne's your teammate and Bernadeschi's with you on the pitch. And I would imagine that's a pretty and like amazing feeling knowing that you're on the pitch with them. But then also it would be tough knowing that like this might be your first pro contract and then you're thrown out there with them and all the experience that they have. So I would imagine that would be super tough, for sure.
Mm-hmm. That's spot on. And when you have teammates like that, the standards go up right away. The
Mm.
spotlight is bigger, the attention on the team is bigger. So, like you said, helping the kids deal with all of that at the same time as, getting their first minutes in the team, establishing themselves as professional players, learning and being self-aware of who they are and what are the good characteristics they bring as a player and what they can do on the field. These are all things that we're trying to help them through.
No, because I
Yeah.
know even like just like reading articles, some of my favorite things to read is like what rookies live with what senior like players on the team. Just like because I don't think people actually realize how hard it is to go from like playing like junior right to professional. Like once you're a professional, all eyes are on you. So I think like some people might underestimate like how you have to act as a professional and just like having like a lot of these former players transition into some of these roles are just like helping these younger generations like be able to be successful off the field or off the pitch.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Absolutely, yeah. And then, as we touched on a little bit earlier, but you're also the co-founder of Black Players for Change, which is an organization that you're a part of. Could you just go a little bit more in depth and tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we started that in the summer of 2020, kind of on the heels of the pandemic and the murder of George Floyd. For me personally, joining an initiative like that was a no-brainer. It was part of my lived life experience, being a mixed Black man, growing up in the Midwest in the United States, experiencing microaggressions, experiencing outright racism. Um, Most often growing up and being in spaces where a lot of people didn't look like me, a lot of people didn't act like me, and always feeling like an outcast. So when it came the chance to like join together with my brothers in the league, it was a no-brainer, like I said, and it is one of the most memorable moments of all of my life now, because of that, because of working across teams and players that are normally adversaries are now your friends and you're working towards one common goal. That was special and something that's usually experienced as a players union, but we took it a step further and kind of organized ourselves. It was a very uncertain time, and the thing that has been born from it is just a brotherhood in a safe space where guys can come share their feelings and get some guidance on how to advance racial justice, racial equity in soccer. And that looks like a lot of different things. It looks like interfacing with the league, being a part of their biggest events like MLS Cup and All-Star. It looks like interfacing with the ownership level and making sure that they, as such large stakeholders in this economy, in this industry, understand what the issues are, engaged on the issues and trying to help so that we can kind of leverage what they are as business people to help move the needle. It works at the academy level as well in trying to create a safe, diverse environment for our youngest players growing up in North America that are all of a sudden receiving more spotlight as the talent in North America is highlighted across the world. And now everyone wants to come here and kind of poach the talent and whatnot. So all of a sudden it becomes an elite atmosphere very quickly. And we want to make sure that not only the players are safe in forms of anti-harassment, but also discrimination. And there's a lot of work there to be done because most people don't know, but in North America we have like the biggest youth soccer scene in all of the world, and that makes sense, geographically how big we are. But there's no league like MLS Next, which is our academy level, that spans such a big geographical area. So we've been doing work there. We've been doing work outside of the league in the communities that we live in, that we play in, building mini pitches. We've done that in collaboration with Black Women's Player Collective, the similar group as us that was formed in NWSL. And those ladies have taught us so much, and it's been a very humbling and honoring experience to be hand in hand with them and working on this, creating safe spaces for our young Black kids to play and have access to the game, because at the youth level it's exclusionary in a lot of different ways, right? So we have to work at that. And then we've also been working on social justice and joining brothers and sisters outside of the soccer ecosystem. Talk any league, we've collaborated with them that you can think of, and we've been working on criminal justice reform and police community relations and civic engagement and education and wealth equity. So it's holistic. It's incredible in a lot of ways. And like I said, it's been a huge part of my life, not only for the last 2 years, but since my birth. And it's part of who I am, and it's great that I get to express it now, and everyone knows that as well. And everyone has been really accepting, accommodating, supportive. I've gotten so many messages. Black Players for Change was always received very well. That was a question that we got in the very beginning. Did you find this challenging coming together as a group? And internally, of course, there's challenges there when you have like 170 players, you have staff, all these different things to get a consensus and move in one direction. But in general, the atmosphere that we were received in was accepting and supportive, and I'd never take that for granted, and continues to be this day. Dynamics are changing socially. We're in a different spot now than we were in 2020. But the most important thing is that Black Players for Change is still here. We're still working. We're still going at it. And as a legacy, that's the most important thing for us, that we continue year after year, decade after decade, pass this thing down to the next generation. So for me, it's been amazing experience.
Yeah, and I would imagine that, that transition after COVID, how like we're kind of back into, we keep saying after COVID. Technically, we're still in a pandemic, but
yeah,
like
yeah. Gray,
as we've slowly started to get back to like normal practices, I imagine that safe space is really important for those players, because they know that they have that space to go express their feelings and have some people around them to support them, which is always really important. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I feel the best when I see the youngest players in the league taking part in our initiatives, or even just taking part in our internal meetings. And maybe it's not that they're showing up to speak out, but they're just showing up to listen. And that makes me feel really good as someone who played in the league for 12 years. This thing was co-founded by a bunch of guys that had like a decade of experience in the league at that point. And so our greatest gift could be to pass this down. And when young guys are showing up just to hear what the old guys have to say, get some advice, and just be a fly on the wall, even that's so meaningful to us, because we didn't have that in a lot of cases when we came into the league. Maybe on one-off individual circumstances, yes, but a group where they can come together and kind of feel safe, that didn't exist. So it feels really good in that way.
That's really good. And then we did talk about like the transition from like amateur to like the pro aspects. Like, what do you think the biggest challenge was from transitioning from being a full-time athlete to now like being in the office full-time?
Yeah, I had an amazing transition, and I like to frame it that I have an amazing transition because I'm still going through it. It's my second year off of the pitch now, and people think of it in such a finite way, like, oh, it's happened. But for me, it's ongoing. I'm missing the pitch now this year than I was last year, and so that's a new emotion. That's a new thing that I have to go through. But I had about as best as you can get, because I got to stay at the club that I was with for such a long time, that I've grown to love, that I grow together with, get to work with people that I was working with in a different capacity as a player. They were supporting me, making sure that I could do my job to the best of my abilities. Now I get to work with them and support the players currently. But we have like such great relationships built up over all those years. A lot of respect there. So I get to do that. I got to keep the family in the same place. It's no secret, I love Toronto. My family loves Toronto. We've built our family here. And so that was a really special thing. So in all of those ways, it was really great. And when I talk to the young players here, I always talk to them not just in the sense of soccer, but in broader society and who we are as human beings, and not tying so much of our identity to themselves as soccer players. That was something that I was able to prepare very well, so that when this transition happened, I could enter in smoothly. There's a lot of transferable skills that athletes have when you talk about in terms of leadership and communication and problem solving skills that work very well in the office. And so I've really leaned into those types of things as I've been in the front office. And then of course you're going through everything for the first time. So you're going to make mistakes and you have to give yourself grace for that. And everyone around me has given me that space as well. When things don't go necessarily according to plan, everyone understands and is there to help me pick up the pieces. And that's the special thing about this club. We take this motto, all for one, very, very seriously, and you don't see it only show up on the pitch. It shows up in a lot of different ways, in the ways that we execute initiatives and the ways that we support each other as employees around here. So I'm getting that full experience now, and it's again, feel like going through that transition, and to be able to do that at my age is not something that a lot of people get to experience. So definitely been cool. And there are good days, there are bad days, but on the overall, way more good than bad. So I've been thankful and grateful for that.
I would imagine too that although you're missing the pitch a lot, you're not missing playing in March and like -10-degree nights at BMO Field.
The coldest nights at BMO are the most memorable for me. So
yeah, that's
I
true.
would take that over the humidity that they have down in Miami, for example. It's nice to have the advantage on our side for once.
Exactly, yeah, for sure. Well, Justin, we've learned so much about you and like Black Players for Change and your role at MLSE right now. But we like to have some fun too, and we know that you have a lot of cool experiences and memories playing soccer as well. So, a few questions here. If you could play for any team in the world, what team would you pick and why?
So I've said this a couple of times, but I'm a Manchester United supporter.
Mm-hmm.
They would be my team. I would love to play at Old Trafford. That came about through my college years. My college coach, Scottish lad, as he would say. He grew up coaching and playing in Aberdeen with Sir Alex Ferguson. They're good friends. They still talk to this day, and so he would always have us watching Manchester United film, and it was glory years, best players that you can think of. So it was easy to be a fan of Manchester United at that point too. So if ever there had been a chance, that would have been my dream club to be a part of. And so my fandom has changed a little bit now. I still support them, and it's a little bit harder to support them these days. Although not this year. This year they're doing all right.
Yeah.
But I'm a loyal guy, and I stick behind them, and I think that comes from being a Clevelander. It's not easy to be a professional sports fan in Cleveland, but we are diehard no matter what's happening. And so that is my club for good and bad.
And then, so you did bring up like Old Trafford. So like, what has been like maybe the most memorable stadium you've played in during your career? Or like, what was like your favorite stadium to play in?
Definitely the more traditional soccer stadiums. Some of the stadiums that we played in CONCACAF Champions League when we went down to Monterrey to play Tigres. That one was incredible experience because of how intense the fans were. It was a great match as well. And I actually ended up getting injured early in the match, so I didn't play all that much. But the intensity in the game, how good we were playing, how good they were playing, the intensity of the fans that made it. But a very traditional, like there was no bells and whistles to that stadium. It's just a bowl with seats, and it's packed to the brim. Yeah. And there's not a seat missing, and the fans are vocal from minute 1 to 90 plus or whatever it ended up being. So that one was special. Azteca is special. Got to be there a couple times. was almost the case that I was there multiple times and missed out playing on the actual pitch every time because I was injured or I was substitute and just didn't get in. We played there a World Cup qualifier with the U.S. men's national team, and it was one of the first times we got a result there. So that one was really cool. I was on the bench for that one. And then finally, we played there in Champions League again with Toronto FC against Club America. And then at the end, my last year, we played Cruz Azul there, but it was no fans at that point because we were still coming out of COVID. So got to actually play on the pitch, which was a fun experience despite the loss. So those ones always stick out to me. The way that Major League Soccer is going now, they've got some really, really cool stadiums. And our stadium here at TFC, it sticks out to me in that sense because I love the more traditional stadiums, and I feel that TFC BMO Field has that. It has that structure, framework, but also that atmosphere where there's not too many bells and whistles. Like places like Atlanta were tough for me because so much lights, there's so much video boards, sound, like there's so much going on. It just didn't feel like natural to me. But yeah, those are the best ones for me.
No, and then like earlier you talked about like how you love staying in Toronto. So like, what did you love about like playing in Toronto? Like, was there like a certain like aspect, or was it just like something as a whole?
It's the whole package. It's the whole package. So when you talk about the club is a big club. A lot of respect around the league for Toronto FC. Obviously went through some good years here, so I enjoyed building that, being a part of the tough moments, the building block moments, and the moments that everyone say are successful, the traditional successful moments, the games where we're winning trophies, the games where we're beating really good teams. I enjoyed that part as well. Enjoyed getting to play with really good teammates and diverse teammates from around the world and learning different things from them. Get to enjoy the fans and how incredible they are, the atmosphere that they create in the stadium, the way they support the players, the team, the club, the pressure that they put on the club. Like I enjoyed that because there are players that play at smaller clubs around the league and don't get to feel that pressure, and that pressure is a privilege. And I think for the younger players, that's something that's difficult for them to understand, but you get to really embrace it as you're older and you're a veteran in the locker room. So I enjoyed that. Enjoyed the stadium, the way it looks, the way it feels, the size, the location. I love that it's so close to downtown. I love the march to the match, all the experiential things that go around the stadium. It really feels like a big market stadium. So I enjoyed that. And then I enjoyed the city. I enjoyed how big it is. I grew up in Cleveland, such a small town when I grew up there, and always thought that I would leave and find myself in a big city at some point. And so I got to live that in a lot of different ways with the team that I was playing on. But I physically lived in the middle of the city when I first got here in 2014. Now I'm a little bit further west, closer to Hyde Park. So still kind of attached to it in a small way, but everything that comes with living in a big city, I enjoy being able to walk everywhere, enjoy different foods from around the world, the different cultures that we have here in Toronto. And then I also enjoyed being outside of the United States and learning what it means to to live in a place that's not the America, and the ups and downs that come with that. That was, a big cultural education for me, which is important. I think people should get to experience that at some point in their lives. So all of that, like I said, the full package is what really made Toronto so special to me.
Yeah, and I know I can relate to that a little bit. Like my family grew up in a small town north of Toronto, but all of my like extended family lives in Toronto. So I love the city. I love going down there and like going to sports games and just like the whole atmosphere, like you said, like it really is like a full package. But I always appreciate leaving too and going back home to like small, quiet, like my home, but then I also love like a few days in Toronto as well. So um, definitely some great aspects and memories there.
Yeah.
And then for you, I can imagine you have so many memories playing well in the MLS. But is there a specific moment that really stands out for you, maybe that you'll never really forget?
No, like I'd mentioned going through this transition, right? And thinking about my playing days maybe a little bit more this year than I was last year. And every time I think about it, I think about a different time, a different game, a different experience. Something that I've found myself doing more recently is like going back and watching film of just like random games. Like, oh, remember we played in Houston in like April of like 2015, and I was like, oh, I wonder if the game film looks the way I remember it. I'll go back and watch it, and like
Yeah.
those like for me, that's what being a good pro is. All of those games that nobody else remembers, you
Yeah.
take those like just as seriously as you take the big ones.
Yeah.
And I think that's what made myself a good professional and would make anyone a good pro. And so I have so many little moments. My wife gives me crap about it all the time because she's like, oh, if you could ever get all of those memories out of your head, you have space for so much more knowledge. But it's like it's stuck in there. I remember plays, I remember everything. And so of course the big ones stand out, to winning MLS Cup and clinching the Supporter Shield at home, um, playing in Champions League, playing in Gold Cup, Canadian championships. Anytime we're winning trophies, like all of those are special moments. But when I think about it, when I think about my playing days, my mind doesn't go straight there right away. It
Yeah.
goes towards plays or moments or good and bad, the things that we struggled through, the things personally I struggled through, and reflect on those moments and how they affect who I am and shape who I am today and have built me up to be the man that I am. I'm just thankful for it all. Thankful for it all that I got to experience it. And now I'm experiencing it from another side. So that's cool as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Justin, we've learned so much about you and your career and your time as a player here today. And Jackson and I want to thank you for your time and talking with us today. Being the final guest, you're our big finale episode. But we always like to give the guest the final word and give you the floor when we close off the episode. So, on behalf of Jackson and I, we thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
No, thank you. Kudos to you too for what you're doing while going through school over there. So big ups and good luck with the future. I hope you see you out at some TFC games soon.
For sure. Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.